Every day, we can experience a full range of emotions, from joy to grief, peace, frustration, and everything in between.
But we're still expected to be an A player at work, be a good partner, to parent children, take care of our animals, and have food on the table, even in the throes of grief. So how the hell are we supposed to do it all?
On the Human Sessions podcast, we'll guide you through strategies for being your authentic self in every part of your life, no matter which emotions are in the driver's seat that day. We'll talk about how human design, energy, and Reiki can all be useful tools for showing up and showing up well.
And if we lost you at the word energy, I promise you will walk away from every episode with tactical tips to feel more like yourself.
I'm Rachel Hatterberg-Walt, human energetics expert and Reiki master.
And I'm Val Marini, grief and trauma specialist and energy healer. This is a no bullshit zone.
This is an anti-perfectionism haven.
This is the Human Sessions podcast. Welcome back to Human Sessions. And today we're going to talk a little bit about just being human, I would say, with other humans and to other humans, with a little bit of a holiday spin, because we're already carrying so much. It's very tense. Sometimes it can be very griefy. We can be in environments that don't make us feel safe, or we can just be anywhere and somebody says a thing that is maybe well-intentioned, maybe isn't, but maybe is. Let's give the benefit of the doubt. And it still hits like a dig, or it's a little bit of a sting. And it's, how do we deal with the things that people say that are not thoughtful?
Right. What a juicy topic, because it does happen all the time. But I think the energetics around the holidays really breed the environment for this, is because it feels like such a forced time to be with people for the sake of being with those people because you've already done it, doing the things you've done because you've already done it or always done it. We go into this hyper routine ritual mode that is, theoretically based around love and spirituality and togetherness and community and coziness and all of that, but really ends up being the opposite a lot of times. So it is an interesting mismatch of intention versus reality. And it really creates this environment of people being on their bullshit. Yeah. So when we talk about what to do when we're stepping into an environment that is riddled with landmines of that, how to manage that, I feel like that's like boot camp for the rest of life when it's not as concentrated. So maybe the first step, Val, is to change our mindset around the holidays. We can look at this as like, ooh, we're going to go to the gym. We're going to lift our grief coping muscles. We're going to lift our healing muscles. We're going to lift our boundary muscles in a time that it feels heavy.
Yeah. And also just dropping expectation.
Ooh.
The pressure. Like a lot of the pressure that like leads us into the stressful environment, because, you can actually be with people that love you very much, that you love, and it's where you want to be, and you're chippy. Like that's what I like to say. Like we're getting like a little bit chippy, or I'm getting a little crabby here because we've created these expectations and we're trying to make something so perfect that it puts this undue pressure on us. And then we're like, just at max capacity, and then someone will say something. I mean, I love the like every year it's like, yeah, my spouse said to me on December 24th, so do you need help with anything? And it's like, I'm going to lose my ever loving mind. Like that's common and is not malintent.
Right.
It's not a jab. It's not shitty. It is maybe a little bit unaware.
Right.
But it's how we receive that, and the reaction that we have is very, very real.
Well, and I think we're also, not only are we having unrealistic expectations about perfectionism around the holidays. I mean, this kind of is cliche at this point to bring this up, but social media and Pinterest culture is very much alive and well during the holidays. And we've talked about in other episodes before, and just personally, like I love a ritual. I love a ritual that's full of intention and meaning and juiciness and coziness. But the holidays are creating so many rituals around capitalism and spending money and showing things for the surface of it and for the likes of it. And And it's negating all the actual meaningful rituals that will establish connection, that we're running out of money, we're running out of time, and we're resenting the holidays before they even get here because of that. I think that's a major
Yeah.
component to it.
Well, you just hit like the intersection of everything, which is like worth, self-worth, and how do we create it? How do we feel it? How do we understand it? And sometimes that's in we feel like the gifts we give will give us more worth. If we get this person this more expensive thing or this thing that they want that's super commercialized or whatever, like we will have more worth to them. If we receive this material thing, we will have more worth. If we show up in a certain way on social media, it's like it gives us worth. But like that's not how it works. Money is not in any way connected to worth for people.
Well, and I think too, not only is it that contributing to this environment of stress and trigger around a holiday season, but you're also with people that maybe you're not usually with, that maybe
Yeah.
don't know what you have going on, whether it be friends or extended family, or maybe um, if you're in your hometown, that you don't visit
Yeah.
regularly over the holidays and you see somebody from your past that you might not want to see again, something like that. So we're hoping to talk about ways to feel resourced, to have a plan, but also to keep honoring your
Yeah.
self-worth in an environment that can be really stressful on a good day.
Totally. And like also making sure I left my like little fourth point out, but like other people's perceptions of you and how they speak to you also has no influence on your actual worth. And
Mhm.
so this is definitely a season where when we are going home, we're seeing people we don't see every day. Maybe our bodies look different. Maybe we've had a rough year or made different choices than would have been their choice. What people say can be so mind-bogglingly just off base is
Mhm.
probably the best way to say it. Just really insensitive. And sometimes that's coming from their place of feeling a lack of worth. And so they want to take a little bit from you, or they think that for like the moment, it's going to give some reprieve to them.
Mhm.
And sometimes that's just a trigger that we've all been conditioned with. And like the moment that you say it, you're like, what have I done?
Mhm.
I don't know how to backtrack this. And then there's just the things that come up in, I would say, small talk, where it's like the line you learn from your great aunt of like what you're supposed to say, what small talk is. And it's like this super unconscious interaction model with people that we don't feel safe with, that don't like make us feel like seen and heard and valued in the right ways. And it like chips away not only at like our ability to tolerate them in the moment,
Mhm.
but also like how we feel and why like depression actually rises after the holidays.
Mhm.
Like, what have we gone through? What additional traumas have we taken on? What have we chosen to carry that other people put on us or said to us or felt judgy or shamey that we like didn't brush off and like shake off in that moment because we didn't have the capacity,
Mhm.
and we carry it right into the new year.
Well, and then there's so much pressure at the turn of the new year to be the perfect example of a human being, to
Yeah.
have all the resolutions made and, set a plan forward. So we're barreling into a holiday season that is ripe of really triggering conversations, unconscious
Yeah.
spending, unconscious time and ritual, feeling very shallow when it's supposed to, quote unquote, right? Like our expectation is that it's supposed to be a time of connection and warmness and love. And then we barrel into a new year where it's more surface engagement,
Yeah.
surface goal. If then this, I'll meet this goal by then. And if not, there goes my self worth,
Yeah.
right? So I think you nailed it with the self worth component. That's really the foundation for everything. So before all of these shenanigans start, it would be a really helpful exercise for all of us to get really clear on
Mhm.
what our self worth is. How do we know it's coming from us? What are its characteristics?
Yeah.
How do I know when I'm embodying my self worth and I'm feeling really good? How do I know where some other part has taken over myself and my decision making and my
We feel it though.
we feel it. And I think obviously one of those components is to start on a mindfulness journey with that and
Yeah.
then use the tool with human design to get at more of the descriptions of, okay, when I show up like this, I am in high self-worth. When I am in high self-worth, I feel comfortable to set a boundary like this. The earlier we can get clear on that, the better, because then we will be shored up and practiced when we go into the holiday season to feel the confidence to set those boundaries, say those things, call those people out in a kind way, or opt out of a conversation in a kind way. So we can show up as our highest self, but also not play into some of these landmines that we were talking about.
Yeah.
Then if we can survive that boot camp of the holidays, it'll feel little more resourced and easier throughout the year when it's not so concentrated in a time like, oh, I remember how to do this.
Totally.
Yeah.
Also, like, I mean, we can pull in like more the woo-woo aspect of like astrology and energies and things that are going on, but this has been a long year. And
A
I've
real long year.
loved this year and a lot of the evolutions that I feel like I've gone through and a lot of the hard stuff that I think, I was a lot more intentional than I had been in the past and maybe, certainly not perfect and maybe not as the best I could have shown up. But like, I feel like it was so much better than the historic patterns that I'm very proud of it and it's been a great year, but I am fatigued. Like we're hitting the end of the year and I loved how you said like barreling into the holidays because that's what it feels like. It feels like we're suddenly like at work and life everywhere. It's like, well, it's almost the end of the year and like we have all these things and now we have to plan all these parties and we have to go all these places and we have to do all these things. And it's like 3 additional jobs on top of like being alive and what we forget. And I will lean into my human design. And Rachel, you can chime in on like why it is this way. And I'm going to try and do it in a way that you can make the very easy parallels because I think it's super obvious. I get like occasionally I'm being better this year about my pre-planning and like what I'm saying no to and what I'm saying yes to up front. However, it doesn't matter. I am still going to, in my head, in a moment when I have energy, be like, you know what I should do? And I'm going to come up with 35 different things that I should do. And I know I am going to run out of energy after the like 3rd thing.
Right.
Maybe the 2nd thing.
Right.
And then I'm going to be like, well, I don't really want to do this anymore. I want to do something different. And I haven't planned in time to recharge. And like the holiday season, yes, is about connection. It's supposed to be about things. If we don't look at it intentionally and actually ask ourselves, like, what do I truly need? Not what is comfortable, not what is my habit, not what are the toxic things that I can do where it's like, I'm just going to drink through the holiday season. I'm going to get through the holidays with my family by drinking. I'm going to just sit by the TV and numb out. It's like, okay, maybe you're going to do that anyway. Maybe that's part of the routine, but like, are you intentionally finding that recovery time? Or are we leading ourselves into a new year? And I don't mean that from the idea that like it goes from December 31st to January 1st and suddenly it's like new me, new year, new me. Like that's wild, especially if you've depleted your reserves. It's like, yeah, it may be a new year, new me, and it ain't the best me. It may be like a notch down. So how do we make sure that we're caring for that?
That's right. And I think you nailed expecting your tendencies to show up, right? Whether it's in the shadowy aspects of some of the energies that we're conscious of, or it's trauma patterns and coping mechanisms that we go to because they feel safe, because they feel comfortable, but they're not necessarily fueling us, giving us life, giving us joy, giving us safety. I think the awareness component is huge. Whether you're daring to ask yourself, like, am I watching TV because I'm numbing or because I'm really interested in this program and I want to understand what this is? Or are you going into it like, I'm intentionally going to numb right now because that's what I got to do? Like, at least
you know what? Sometimes
we've got some awareness on that. And the energy, the collective energy and astrological weather of 2025 is interesting at best.
Yeah.
It's going to be spicy. It's going to be revolutionary. It's going to be different than our lifetime has seen because some of the planets that are far away are moving locations and they never do that. Like people in our generation have never experienced a transit that way, and we can feel it, whether we know this language or not. It's the collective.
I had a friend the other day that was like, they just had, I think, their first natal chart really done with them. And they were like, oh, this year's going to be wild for me. And I was like, oh, honey, buckle up. I mean, I didn't say this because I don't want to scare them, but like, no, it's going to be like that at all directions.
Right.
It's going to be everyone at the same time. 2026 is having huge, huge shifts. So it's like, yeah, if you can anchor in that comfort of being like, this is going to be a personal journey for me, but
Mhm.
understanding that like tumultuous is the path to revolution,
Right.
it ain't going to be easy.
Right. Well, and in human design, Ra Uru, the founder of the system, predicted in 2027 there was going to be this massive
Hmm.
shift, and he did it in a kind of scary, shocking way, like we
Totally.
talked about earlier. But Karen Curry Parker is also bringing the counter aspect of that is sometimes we have to go through pressure to become
Yep.
a diamond, and we have all of these gifts as well as the shadows. So we can focus on the shadows and the fear of
Yep.
whether it be an uncle saying something inappropriate or massive collective shifts. We can look at it and say, okay, I can choose my gifts, I can choose my resources, I can
Yeah.
choose my um, coping strategies that I know feel good to me. I can choose the relationships that I know feel secure, feel good for me. I can choose the habits that feel
Yep.
good to me. And when we can do that in a time that is not so pressurized and our
Hmm.
basic instincts are not having to overtake, we still have our kind of left brain energy of reasoning and problem solving here and not just the primal kind of emotional triggered
Yeah.
response that happens when we're in a triggered moment, whether it be with our nervous system being triggered from a trauma or something, a grief that happened over the holidays, or a massive collective shift that could be really scary, a la COVID type
Yeah.
situation. If we can practice now when we are on a more stable basis and not in the heat and throes of whatever life is
Yeah.
going to give us on whatever level it is, we will be able to, pave those neurological um, wires and roads so that it will be easier to access in those
Yeah.
times of stress. And so, my hope
Yeah.
is that we can do that together collectively. There's a huge movement of, yes, present yourself authentically, radically, authentically individual, but also for the collective, for us to
Yeah.
come together as a group to be able to weather whatever comes our way. But first is the awareness, then,
Yeah.
grab some tools to put in your tool belt, grab the people that you can access to be on your team, your squad, so you can feel more resilient no matter
Yeah.
if it's a holiday dinner conversation that sends you into a complete spiral or a collective issue that's coming.
You know, what's been really challenging through 2024 and is going to persist through the holidays because, we're on the other side of election in an election cycle where not everyone's going to be happy, slash no one's going to be happy, slash maybe only a few people are going to, I mean, it's like it's just ripe for conflict. And like, let's step back from the like engagement with other people part of that, because that's like a pretty obvious recipe for disaster. Um, it's also the mind share. So what I realized over 2024 was that I don't want to give my time, my energy, or my mind share beyond the limit of what I can control, what I can influence, and like what I am, I would say, resilient enough to handle.
Hmm.
And if I'm repeating the same thing day over day, if I'm feeling anxiety about the same thing day over day, the question I have to ask myself is like, is this in the realm of my control, first of all? And if it's not, I'm going to shut the door to anything that's feeding that into me. I'm going to do whatever I can do that I have within my control. And then I'm going to find the places, it's like, where's the like positive lean in for me in my life? Where do I have control over things? And how can I move myself forward in them and not get stuck? So I have like more of an anxious attachment style. I'm I have a lot of people in my life that have more of an avoidant attachment,
Hmm.
and that could be
That
like,
tracks, though,
yeah,
doesn't it?
totally.
Like,
Um
we're going to attract those avoidant people to make us real anxious so we can get this awareness and healing started.
totally. And
Yeah,
so like
same.
the ignition for me is being like, okay, well, I need to start doing something, but like this I'm like being dragged either by this person or this like concept or this moment in time, like whatever's happening around me, I'm going to get the most anxiety if there's something that makes me feel powerless paired with something which is like not being able to move forward, avoiding addressing the thing. Like I want to like zone in on what the problem is, and I want to have a plan for myself of like, how am I going to deal with this? and what is my like eject button if I need to. And so through the political landscape, mine was I canceled I don't have cable. I actually canceled that in 2020. I muted people on social media that were like not speaking in a way that I found to be productive, and I found it very counterproductive.
No matter what side they're on.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I find it all because I don't.
But if you can't recognize a humanity and a respect for another being, no matter what you disagree with, I can't talk to you.
Well, also you could be saying something I totally agree with, but if you're screaming at me, I'm going to be like, what is up? Like, okay. And I get it. Like, this is where the compassion piece comes in, where it's like, hey, listen. And this is even, I would say this is actually more impactful for me for people who I do not align with on issues. The curiosity of like, what is the grounding aspect that's making them feel so powerless that that's how they feel?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have enough information to feel really threatened this way, or am I just creating it? Because a lot of times I found that it's like I would have an input from somebody and then my mind would take it further than the actual piece of information. And then it's like really easy with my anxious style to be like, oh, let's go to
fill in the blanks.
Absolutely. I'm going to go to the like worst possible scenario because I want the worst possible scenario so that like the reality of it will be easier for me. And that processing is just so, you're looking at my chart.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm like,
she's going right into that chart.
Let me look at this.
Like that quick. Processing kind of like worked for me for a while in terms of survival.
Of course. Sorry.
All right. Well, you're going to lay in a second. But what I've been working through is like being very careful with that. And what's been hard for me is like other folks who are not in the same place and they're not ready to do the work and they're feeding off of the trauma cycle. They're feeding off of the spin. That's how they're
trying to get a need met in a really unhelpful way.
Yeah, totally. Only knows chaos and only knows anxiety. And so they're not going to be able to meet me there. And they then, because of that, it's not intentional, it's not conscious, cannot respect my boundaries.
Right.
Where I'm like, this is not welcome in my life anymore. And it's like almost like I have to treat my entire world as my home, where it's like, I'm sorry, I'm locking the door. Mm-hmm. Like, I will talk to you tomorrow. I'm going to put my phone down. Like, whatever it is, finding that boundary was very hard for me, but is the only way for me to survive. Because I do come from a family that is historically, I think when even tensions were so much lower and the stakes were so much lower, came from very different perspectives and very different backgrounds. And there's like a very clear rationale for that is very practical. It makes absolute psychological sense when you sit down with them if we get to a place where we're able to have like conversations. But I do not anticipate that that's going to be the experience of the majority of us through the holidays, with things heightened, with stress across the board and everything that we're living with. We're still running high off of like grief and trauma from COVID and the changes post. Mm-hmm. And there's so much going on, like you said, like in the collective that people don't understand energetically in the same way. So you're like, why do I wake up and I feel this way today? Mm-hmm. And like, I'm feeling hot. I'm going to go fight with somebody because that's going to make me feel better. It's like, we're primed. Mm-hmm. All right. So now tell me why.
Well, it's so funny. As you were speaking, your profile was just speaking for you, because what you were saying was your mindset was trying to fill in the blanks out of fear. It was trying to get all the information it could, even though you didn't have all the information. Well, your profile in human design is that part of your chart where it describes the role you came to play. There's 2 numbers, any combination from 1 through 6. And you have the number 1, which is called the investigator. And literally, ones feel like if they don't have all the information, they're literally unwell, unsafe. Yeah. And so it makes sense that your mind was trying to fill in the blanks in a panic to give you the information to feel safe. So then you could make the action or do the thing or say the thing or opt out or set the boundary, whatever the next step was. You were moving past that to the step because that's how it was trying to make you feel safe. So it makes so much sense. And when you know your human design, you know your tendencies that way, you can see it coming and you can do it with intention versus out of fear and lack. So it's actually helpful and useful for you. So it's interesting too, because when you look at your human design chart, in a way that, again, it doesn't describe you to where, you're in this box. It's really meant to be a helpful tool for you to use as you want to use. So for the holidays, with time with family, when we're going to feel fear, we're going to feel, in doubt and worry and grief and things. Grounding is such a
Yeah.
helpful tool. And grounding, has been in more of the zeitgeist lately in more general terms and not just in the woo-woo spaces, but it's basically the sense of feeling your body in your space on earth, metaphysically and metaphorically, but also literally, like putting
Yeah.
your feet on the ground. And all the benefits that brings is being hashed out in research as we speak. Well, you can also use your human design chart for that as well. So when you look at your gates, the numbers on the side, the first two are some of the more prominent energies in
Mhm.
your chart, and the bottom one is the earth energy that you're bringing, and then the top one is the sun energy you're bringing. And so these energies play together and can be really useful for you. So, for instance, I have the 21, which is all about control in its highest self. It looks like authority, it looks like valor. And this is in my personality sun, which is one of the brightest energies of me, right? But when it's in doubt, when it's in fear, when it's in grief and
Yeah.
scarcity and anger, it looks like micromanaging. So I can know going into the holiday season, going into next year's shit show of an astrology, I need to watch that balance
Yeah.
of, am I in micromanaging mode because I'm scared and I'm trying to control everything in sight versus am I in an authority? Can I trust myself? Can I resource myself? Can I regulate myself so that way I can
Mhm.
manage the group better? But the way to get there is through the earth energy, which for me is the
Yeah.
48, which is alone time, silence, stillness,
Yes.
contemplation. And so for yours, Val, is so interesting. And this plays out in your connections because it's a 4 line. So it plays out in your connections, but yours is the gate of ordering, is your
Mhm.
earth gate. So if you can complete things, if you can bring things, to finish and completion, that is going to ground you to allow your gate 50 in your sun, which is values, to shine. So then
Yeah.
if you know that you need to finish up some tasks before you head into a holiday situation or a stressful situation to allow
No.
you, I know,
I
right?
mean, I
To
know this, but
allow
I can't
you
wait
to
to tell you
stand.
why.
Oh, I'm so excited. To allow you to stand strong in your values at the Christmas dinner or at the, Hanukkah
Yeah.
celebration or whatever you're celebrating over these holidays,
Or not celebrating.
or not
Whatever you
celebrating.
choose to do with your time.
Exactly. That's a way to use the chart that can really resource and serve you in stressful times like these.
So I've recently in the last week spent several $100s on more bins, but like large tote bins because I'm in the process and I've committed for this weekend of literally going through my entire attic and repacking every box into a like reusable, sustainable, safer bin.
Yeah.
And I needed them all to color code based off of like what their use is. And it's like, this is like, I'm like so compelled to do it that like, it's like a train that's not going to stop because I know, like, I can feel in my bones, I have to prepare myself for what is going to be a very busy season. And for me, I'm trying to balance out. I'm being very intentional about trying to balance out through the holidays. But like the beginning of 2025 is like taking off with a jetpack for me and like things that I know I have to resource myself more for. I'm traveling a ton for work these days. That is not my strength. It used to be. And then I learned what it felt like to be totally grounded and happy and home and like regulated. And I'm having to learn flexibility in those routines. And so to do that, I need my environment to be organized. And I'm going to go through this like purging of all these things that I don't want in my home anymore. It's like moving through. But I laugh so hard because I also got new grounding sheets.
Yeah. Yeah. Your
That I'm,
energy
like,
system is just like ground me
I'm like,
here.
oh my God, I
Yeah.
literally just changed those sheets before I came here. And I was like, I'm going to sleep so great tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Because our systems need the grounding to be able to weather the storm. We're trees. We're basically
Yeah.
just glorified trees because we need our roots in the soil to be able to stay strong during storms. And if it's rained a lot this year and your
Mhm.
soil is loose and one more big strong wind comes, you can fall over. So
Yeah.
I think the more we can have in our tool belt, in our awareness, know our tendencies, know our gifts, know what it looks like when we're showing up a certain way. So then we can go back and say, oh, Like, for instance, when I'm showing up in my micromanagey,
Yeah.
forceful kind of controlling behavior, it's an indicator to me that says, "Ooh, I'm in my shadow aspect of this. What do I need to get back to gift status? Like,
Yeah.
what do I need? Do I need alone time, which is mostly always yes? Do I need nature, which is again mostly always yes? Or water or food
Yeah.
or coverage from a babysitter or to check mark something off the list that's been hounding me that really only takes 15 minutes. What
Yeah.
is it that I can do to ground myself so I can show up as a sturdier tree in the midst of whatever storm you might be walking into, holiday or not?
Mine is also, and I felt this today where I was like, I'm feeling this like my morning routine is a little bit looser. I've been doing a ton of travel. I've had a lot of things going on and they're all good things and I want to make space for them, but it knocked my routine off a bit. And I actually like, I don't love daylight savings because I don't love going out the door at work or like at 5 p.m. it's dark. Like
Mhm.
I don't love this season for that reason, but I had this kind of shift in my mindset this morning where I was like, wow, I like need to recalibrate in my mornings because I want to prioritize this time. And I have this kind of like new angle that I want to take with it. And like this hour is going to help me do that.
Mhm.
Like this is an hour, like there is a benefit that I can create from this. It's not going to deliver to me, but like I can either be like, oh, great, I'll readjust over 4 days, or I can maintain my same time cadence and just have more of what I'm needing.
Mhm. Well, and you brought up a good point about seasonality too. A lot of us have lost connection to the seasons. We're part of
Mhm.
nature and we don't acknowledge that as a collective. And
Yeah.
granted, there's lots of cultures that do, and they're probably happier than most of us because of that very um, grounding force of knowing what's coming, of using the seasons as a flashlight to, in the fall, pruning what no longer serves us, in the
Yeah.
winter, conserving what energy we do have and allowing for rest and allowing for things to die off. Talk about grief, allowing for a season of grief, allowing for us to stay in and stay warm by the fire. And then spring, allowing for new fruits to come, new programs to be established,
Yeah.
new things to be birthed. And then in summer, to be in, fire mode where we can afford to go and do that. We've lost that aspect. And I think that
Yeah.
makes us feel ungrounded as well and can provide, during a
Yeah.
holiday season, we've got so much going on, so many things to do, people to see, deadlines to meet before the new year. And that is opposite of what the seasons are kind of telling us to do. And I think
Yeah.
at a subconscious level, we feel that. And that can breed a lot of anxiety too. And then another point you made about looking forward to a new year that's busy or that is demanding things of us that maybe we don't feel ready for or we don't want to do can preemptively bring a lot of anxiety into the present moment. And then we bring that in anticipation of that
Yeah.
through the holidays as
Yeah.
well. And so, I think the bottom line is we got to be easy with ourselves.
Mhm.
We got to find what grounds us, whatever tool helps us get through times of dysregulation, our people that make us feel safe and comfortable,
Yeah.
and put one foot in front of the other and just try to
Yeah.
do the best we can for ourselves, but also recognize that in other people.
Yeah. No, I would also like tack onto that just like the final kind of like, let's take the other perspective reminder of if we're really in a good place with this, like I'm talking about like, I can feel little shifts and I'm not in a place of struggle yet. I'm like, I'm feeling little shifts. I'm feeling a little anticipatory anxiety. I'm feeling that like need for myself to prepare for the next season. But I'm coming from that from a pretty resourced and pretty strong place right now. Like right now, I'm feeling pretty good, all things considered. And because of that, this is also the season to, if you see in somebody else that they are not in that
Mm.
place,
Hmm.
there's also a lot of struggle. There's a lot of, financial imbalance and strain that's happening right now from a myriad of reasons. Obviously, we're in North Carolina. I'm very attuned to what's going on in Western North Carolina and the fact that, like, that's ongoing and will
Hmm.
be ongoing. And what am I doing on a daily basis to like serve my community there and be of service to others and recognize that like the only way, and we'll come back to this many, many times, we've said it before, like manifesting is not for yourself. You will not be successful in manifesting or aligning to like your best, happiest, highest life if you're not coming from the lens of connection and being of service to others and having that incorporated in your approach to how you are purposefully building.
Well, I think we've lost the fact that we belong to each other.
Totally.
We are part of a collective experience. No matter what our differences are, we are part of a collective experience. And one day we are going to be on the end of needing the help, needing
Mm-hmm.
the basic needs, needing the safety and
And we
survival.
probably have been.
And we have been and we will again. These are
Yeah.
cycles that happen. And so if we can prioritize when we do feel safe, when we do feel well resourced and able to give to others, it is our duty to
Yeah.
do that, because not only just because we're going to be on the other side of it, because those people who ever need the help at that point or need the support at that
Yeah.
point are an extension of your own humanity. And when
Yeah.
you don't recognize that in others, you can't recognize it in yourself, and vice versa. If you can't recognize it in yourself, you
Totally.
can't
And
recognize it
that's
in others.
the whole point of the season, actually. It's like
Yeah.
we've layered on all of these other things, but I'm a person that like I don't really care too much for like the things aspect of life. I mean, and I say that because I don't feel like I'm in a place of scarcity, so I'm fully resourced. I don't need more things. This is like a constant conversation with my family. Like I don't want more things. I would much rather have like time or if they want to spend money on something, it's like, can you donate to this thing that's really important to me? Can you do this thing for this other person? But a lot of times in the holidays also, we lose that connection to like the meaning between gift giving and how it was like originally intended
Mhm.
and the purpose behind it and what makes it feel good and valuable. And there's, the very obvious aspect of like give to those who are in need, but also like in our relationships, maybe resetting and being like, does this person really need this thing? Is this bottle of wine or this like, TikTok purchase that I made 12 of so that I could give the same thing to everybody? Is that going to be the most meaningful? Or could I sit down and actually like tell this person how they've impacted me this
Right.
year, or that I see them, or I see how hard it's been if they've gone through a year of grief, like right from the heart. I have a collection of letters like that
Mhm.
that I keep in a bin that are like so much more important to me and so much more valuable than any gift I've ever received, ever. And so I do that with other people as well. And it's also such a gift to me. Like it makes
Mhm.
me feel so much better. It creates a stronger bond. That is the worth. That's where
Right.
we land the worth back with ourselves and in our relationships and
Right.
in the purpose of what the season is. So just want to like encourage everyone to think of it that way. And occasionally I will write those letters to people that are no longer in my life. And you don't have to send them, but
Mm-mm.
it's very healing. It's very helpful. It's like, sometimes you send them anyway because, like, what's it going to hurt?
Mhm.
Have no expectations with it. But that is definitely to reland like one of the resourcing tools that I think would be beneficial to everybody. Like,
Mhm. Well, and you're speaking again to the overall theme of this podcast, which is how can we bring more of ourselves, our authenticity, and our intention into everything we do,
yeah,
whether it be rituals around holidays or intentionally connecting with friends throughout the year, especially when they're
hmm,
going through a hard time, seeing people for who they are, offering a hand when you feel resourced and they don't, and then receiving a hand when
yeah,
you aren't feeling resourced and you need it. And then just asking ourselves, like, why are we doing this, and how can I bring more of myself and a truer part of myself and all of my values and intention into this act.
yeah,
And that's what I hope we all can do during this, the rest of this year and early next year. And throughout our years, we can just bring more consciousness, more awareness, and more intention around the way we spend our time, we spend our
yeah,
money, we spend our love and our energy. And yeah, that's my hope for me and myself and for all of you too. And we're here for you to help you. Um,
thank you.
collect some of
Yeah,
these. Yeah, collect some of these resources and collect your brain around all this stuff and align to your true values so it feels like an overflowing from your core
yeah.
self. So,
I think like step one with responding to folks who say things that are maybe
mhm.
harmful or unkind, intentioned or not intentioned, is like ask the question back. If you have no response, it's like, Oh, why would you ask me that?
Or I've said before, like, did you mean to say this?
Yeah.
Or if it's obviously a conversation that I'm not going to participate in, I'll say that too. Like, I'm not going to participate in this conversation,
Yeah.
or I'm not going to let you say that. And then I'll leave
Yeah.
too. I've done that before.
It's a little bit
It's
like,
hard.
if you follow Brene Brown and she tells this one story about how she was like trying to compete with this 80-year-old woman in the pool and it was like completely her own insecurity and she's trying to beat her or whatever. And they get out of the water and the old woman who was like, the older you get, sometimes the more embodied you can get and you're just like nailing it with how you receive and respond to the world. And she just looked at her and was like, "You okay, hun?" Like
Right. Yeah.
that acknowledgement of like, what's up? Like, I
Right.
know you didn't mean to say that to me. Like, are you
Is
okay?
there
Like,
something
do you
going
want to talk
on?
about this?
Yeah.
Like, is this bothering you? Just asking that, but just like putting it back, like that's their thing. So either verbally putting it back or just emotionally in yourself, be like, "Yeah, I'm going to give that back to you. Like, I'm good, actually."
Well, and it can be really hard when your nervous system is activated to be able to pause. I
Yeah.
remember before I did any of this like deep healing work, in the lens of parenting gurus would be like, well, just simply pause and respond instead of react. And I would be like, who the fuck can do that? Like, I'm so angry. So if you find yourself in that spot, the best thing might be just to excuse yourself.
Oh, totally. Oh, yeah.
Or do some anger management things. Like I'll squeeze my fingers, and just, don't hurt yourself or anything, but I'll squeeze my fingers and just give myself a tactile
Oh,
moment to
geez.
put the energy somewhere. And then it helps me calm down enough to be able to think of something that I could say or something I could do that wouldn't cause further harm or wouldn't play into the dynamics
Yeah.
that were dealt to me, because that is something that I have found over and over to be unhelpful. And then I talk to my kids about all the time is like,
Yeah.
we need to stop this dynamic of hurt and pain. And so if, simply pausing, if that is not available to you because somebody has triggered your deepest chorus wound, like
Yeah.
you can't take that lightly, then it might be having to excuse yourself. Or if you do say the thing that you wish you hadn't said,
Mm-hmm.
if you can calm your nervous system down to a certain degree to where your brain comes back online and you can go repair with that person in
Yeah.
whatever respect,
Without making an
without making an excuse and passing off their behavior as like acceptable, but also owning your own shit, can be really healing for yourself. Like, I'm not even
Yeah.
talking about the asshole that just like totally dug out your core wound.
Yeah.
I'm talking about you. Like, that's what they say or what they mean, I think, when they say like forgiveness is not necessarily about
Oh,
the other
yeah.
person's behavior, but really so you can heal and cope. If I can repair with myself too and say, oh man, they really got at your core wound there.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, Rachel. Like, it makes sense that you acted this way. It makes sense that you feel this way. It makes sense that you said that thing. And also,
Yeah.
that's not you. You don't want to show up and leave that as.
Or like I've recognized with certain people, it's like there's something about, especially since I've been on the other side of like, misery loves company. When
Yeah.
your company leaves you and you're still in misery, it's like, oh wow, like my healing is really triggering their core wound. And like, I'm so sorry that they still feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds really passive aggressive. And I wouldn't maybe just say that to their face, but like that is some of the internal dialogue of like, oh, if I can have compassion for that, like people who aren't struggling with their core wounds don't say unkind, mean things to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Only people who are hurting.
Right. Well, and it's painful. It's a painful process too. I work with my clients a lot on this, of the stretchiness of relationships when you're doing a healing work and you are bringing
Mhm.
more consciousness into your decisions, how relationships do change and
Yeah.
how painful that can be. So it's not even just in a holiday situation where your, crazy uncle says something asinine about your beautiful body. It's
Uh-huh.
also when a friend is making decisions that you don't align with anymore or treats you in a way that does not align with you and doesn't fly with you anymore. It's the same thing. It's okay, how am I going to handle this outgrowing of this relationship or behavior that
Yeah.
maybe I was too scared to, and that's very possible too. And the climate we're in right now is to feel literally and be literally unsafe to claim a part of yourself or
Yeah.
to stand up for a value that you hold, something like that. And so you always have to weigh the risks and the benefits of being able to do that. But allowing for the space for yourself to do it in a way that feels accessible and still honoring you and doesn't give the other person a pass, but still honors where you are, because the ripples of that are fantastic too. Like when someone else in the family sees you holding a boundary or sees you excusing yourself from the table, where and in the past you might have ripped their head off, or in the past you might have manipulated your emotional response for some other gain, you know, and they see you choosing a different pattern.
It's permission.
It's permission for them to choose a different pattern and to say, ooh, I wonder what Val's doing over there, that now she can like respond instead of react. You know, and it's a ripple effect of healing. It really can be.
And I would say, and to go back to your point really quickly about if you're like unable to find that grounding, if you're unable, I had a situation a couple years ago. And it was like in the very, very beginning stages of me like doing my healing. And it was stuff that I hadn't been conscious of for a long time. Like I was like dredging from the bottom. So like, even if you're in your healing work, the first thing that happens in your healing work is you feel weaker. Like you're pulling up stuff.
You're so tender.
Yeah, that you had been protecting yourself from for a long time, that the only way to get through it and the only way to get the other side is to let it like rise up and to fully process it. And that doesn't mean you spend 24 hours fully processing it and then you do the same avoidant thing and you go on the same path as before. It's like really deep work. It takes months, it takes years, and it's very, very hard. And I was in a situation where somebody was threatening safety and identity and value of like groups of people. And I was somewhat also a member of, I would say, like that like broad community, but I was sitting across from, there was somebody else sitting with us who I knew was going to be absolutely triggered. And my protector stepped in like unfucking believably. And the result of that was that I went full protector, full fire protector. Like if I hadn't removed myself from the situation, I think I probably would have like gone beyond an emotional reaction. So I removed myself and went upstairs and like could not stop crying because like that core wound had been triggered so deeply, and it wasn't even about me. It doesn't have to be directly at you. It can just threaten something that nobody knows about. It's like people say the dumbest shit conversationally, and we have no idea what's happening in each other's lives. We have no idea what we've been through. And we're not going to be able to make everybody conscious. It's not possible. We've been trying. People have been trying for a long, long time. But the only way that I got through that is, you know, we have safe friends. Like there are people or resources or hotlines if you feel like you don't have anybody. But I had, you know, my best friend who lives very far away, and she is my best friend because I can call her at any moment, whether we spoke 3 hours ago or 3 months ago, and was like, this thing that just happened. This is how I'm feeling. And I think I actually was like, I am just like not okay. Like I am not okay. And I got an immediate response and like 8 minutes of like, that is not acceptable.
Validation.
These are the things that we know to be true. This is where your worth lies. That person isn't, you know, dumb. We didn't use those words, but like went through that whole process where I was like, okay, yeah, I'm getting this co-regulation. I'm also being grounded in the fact that like the people whose opinions of me really matter, love me, they ground me, they support me, even in this moment that I feel like my worst self.
Well, but also too, let's honor the righteous rage that needs to fucking happen sometimes.
Also true.
Like, it is unacceptable to hurt somebody's body, mind, spirit.
Yeah.
However, anger is not bad, and an emotional regulated state is not always calm and collected. We are emotional beings. We experience life through emotion, some of us more frequently than others, depending on if you have an emotional wave in human design or not. But
I do.
Righteous rage. I do, dear listener.
Just anybody who doesn't know, I'm very strong.
Yeah. Well, and depending on your emotional wave cycle, that could have been triggering more or less for you too. I mean, honestly, and the presentation of how that was triggered would come out in a different way as well.
Y'all,
this really is.
It was super deep, and it affected. I mean, it was actually a great exercise because I thankfully was able to like talk through with the other people around me that I didn't feel protected by, why I didn't feel protected. And sometimes those people just didn't ever go through that life experience, and they have no idea. And they're going to default to, I want to diffuse this situation.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the most accessible thing to me. And I was like, you're dismissing my experience. You're dismissing my feelings. And so it's like, still the only answer for me was to remove myself from that situation, even if I thought there were people that cared for me, ground down with the like surest thing, get myself regulated, run through a couple scenarios in my mind, not anxious ones, but like some exercises, and then like go back to the people that I would say were in my like second concentric circle of trust and be like, hey, I'd like to pull you into my first concentric circle, but first I need to explain to you what just happened.
Yeah. And that can really be a catalyst for growth and learning and understanding and closeness. Like, the research out there in relationships is if you're in a relationship that doesn't have conflict, then that's like a red flag. Like there can be friction and we can feel safe in relationships with conflict and friction. It's how it's managed and how much you feel seen and heard and safe to experience the full range of you that can impact the quality and health of that relationship. And we are going to, be around a variety of people with a variety of experiences and a variety of concentric circles of trust.
Yeah.
And so how can we honor ourselves and honor our authentic expressions in a way that can promote more healing and more understanding and more connectiveness versus, more separation, more hate, because the world doesn't need any more of that. So if we can show up the best we can, resourced and all, and then when we make a mistake, when we react instead of respond, ground, like you said, recalibrate, recenter, evaluate what were the contributing factors of that, and then bring in the people that you feel safe to bring in to that understanding, we can use it for good. It doesn't have to shut down immediately.
And I would say just a reminder to everybody, because we haven't said this, like certainly, we are always available on Instagram and all those things. However, in those moments, also know that there's resources out there. There's mental health professionals. There's places
hotlines,
like Better
like you
Me.
said,
Like
and
there's resourcing available. You're never actually alone.
But fear and separation tell us that lie. Like we're the only ones that are experiencing this and we're only alone. No, there are people out there that don't even know you that love you and want to listen to you and want to hear what you have to say.
That is the entire reason that we have this podcast. It is 100% to help people feel more seen, know that they're not alone. All of these emotions, all of these behaviors, all of these struggles are like actually universal. It's hard to be human.
Yeah. Okay, we have also created a space called the Human Session Studio on Circle. That is a free community off of the regular social medias, a unique space for us to take this conversation further, to connect you with people that are on this journey with you so you feel less alone, so you feel seen and heard and validated. Val and I are in there to answer questions, to give you some behind the scenes of the podcast, to offer you really helpful, supportive resources that are free to you, like lists of ways to handle anger or meditations or different resources if you feel very out of control and you need a hotline and that's the only kind of tool in the tool belt that you've got at a moment of trigger, that can be in there for you. So please join us in this free Circle community. The link is in the show notes and we hope to see you in there. Thank you so much for listening to Human Sessions. If you loved this episode, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts so more people can join our Human Sessions. We'll see you in the next episode.